As a huge fan of frictional games with Penumbra, Soma, and of course Amnesia, I went into Amnesia the Bunker with high expectations. I was worried here about the quality as the game seemingly reduced scope as far as the setting only being the bunker, and of course the idea that you're meant to replay the game and have a new unique layout each time. I was worried that these ideas would get in the way of what could be a really great horror experience. Thankfully, I can say that Amnesia answered all of these concerns with ease, and this is a must-play for horror fans. However, there are some minor criticisms I have that I'll address, so stick around for that. As far as the need to knows, Amnesia the Bunker is developed and self-published by Frictional Games for PC, Xbox One, Xbox Series X and S, and PS4. There's no native PS5 version, but you can play the PS4 version on PS5. And it was day one on Xbox Game Pass when it launched June 6th of 2023. Otherwise, it's $24.99 US for about, from my experience, 5 hours of playtime. But once again, there are incentives for playing the game again and again, so there is some replay value there that I'll get into. So as usual, I'll break this down into my core 4 categories: the story, the gameplay, visuals, and of course the audio design. Jumping right in with the story, you find yourself fighting your way through the trenches of World War I. With enough gunfire to deafen a Metallica fan, it's time for our protagonist Henry to head inside. With a few curveballs thrown at us, we find ourselves waking up in a dark infirmary within the bunker. It's evident almost immediately that there is something wrong, and through useful notes and environmental storytelling, it's all too clear what that is. Oh, and of course, this happens.
You want to escape? There's dynamite in the arsenal. And a handle to trigger it somewhere in the excavation site. Get them, and you can make it out. Shit. That thing, it's coming for me. Here, take this. Finish me off, please. I want to die at the hands of a brother soldier, not that monster. There's ammo in the pantry. Get it. Do the job, please.
You quickly have an objective: to find everything you need to rig explosives to reopen the bunker. The second objective is one that's arguably much more important, and one that's definitely a lot more prominent: survive. There's the ever-present stalker who is always hunting you throughout the bunker and your time here. I love this premise. It's dark and it's intimate. There's a grounded reason for why the game is the size and length that it is, grounded to the size of the bunker, of course. And truth be told, it's a mostly engaging tale. I can't lie, I didn't find every collectible, note, or dog tag even, but I did find most of them. And the notes that I did find tell the tale of an army unit's descent into madness and paranoia as the soldiers are slowly picked off by an unknown entity. On top of that, there's some nice fluff like letters written home to loved ones that never got a chance to be sent, and of course helpful hints towards areas you can leverage like the wine cellar. The quality of life with the notes is also something that I've never quite seen before in a game like this. You can sort the notes by their date and also by their author, so it's easy to keep a comprehensive timeline of both the entire bunker and the outcome of each character. And then of course a lot of times you're finding their dog tags throughout the levels as well, and that's super important to the narrative in a way. Unfortunately though, I don't really think I liked the ending of the game. It feels all too sudden, which both makes sense and baffles me at the same time, as it offers very little conclusion to any burning questions that may have lingered. Thankfully, the story itself is delivered in a well-presented and digestible way that paces itself entirely upon the player agency in the gameplay. Firstly, a big draw to the Amnesia series has always been the interactivity that is present within the world. pulling doors and levers open manually, picking up and throwing most objects, and dragging those that are realistically too heavy. Each of these items and uses are leveraged in such a way to add tension and freedom during obstacle puzzles, while the bunker pulls at every possible string a horror game could pull. And keep in mind as I tackle the rest of these talking points that the bunker is meant to be replayed. Items found like healing and grenades and ammunition are randomized in both what they are and their placements throughout the world, as well as the codes for doors and lockers, and the placement of traps like tripwires are all changed as well. This, with the game's shorter length and difficulty options, make it a super easy sell for a higher replay factor. So while I do say that the game only takes about 4 to 5 hours depending on how you play, I definitely think that you're going to get a lot more enjoyment out of this game than what is just there at that base level. But as for what makes any one playthrough good, the game is basically hub-based. You have a safe room very reminiscent of Resident Evil with a chest for storage and a lantern to save. This is the only save system present throughout the game, so as you go out on a run for supplies and story progression within the bunker, your checkpoints are limited to here. You may think to yourself that as a pro gamer, you don't need to save, right? Well, maybe that's true, but you'll also be going back to the hub in order to keep the lights on. See, war is expensive and the French forgot to pay the power bills, so you need to collect fuel and keep the generator running. There's also a stopwatch item that you can find that you can sync up with the fuel gauge so you know exactly when the power is going to go out again, so you know when you need to return. It's ingenious and innately stress-inducing by the nature of timing and being punctual to anything for me. Though whether you're counting ticks or not, there is never a time when you want to be caught in the dark. When the lights go out, the stalker is far more bold, leaving the vents more often and generally being more aggressive. This is basically a death sentence unless you're close to the safe room as it is. Now, dealing with the stalker is up to the player. I'll leave most options up to you to find out, but bullets will drive him away, but they will also piss him off in the process. But a well-placed grenade or Molotov can tend to get him off of your trail for a little bit longer, and that would leave an opening for you to maybe hide or continue along your trail. But you're going to want to make sure that wherever he is when he's being aggressive, you want to make sure he's not in the room that you're hiding in, because he can break closets, tables, and even boxes to look for you. And that really leads to the idea that you're never truly safe from this enemy, and I love that. Another thing about dealing with the stalker is that it's almost entirely based off of sound. The bunker is quiet, so every sound that you make, from revving up your flashlight to breaking open a door, is going to elicit some kind of reaction from the creature. He's going to get nearer and nearer until given a reason to actually come out of the vent and investigate. There's always a push and pull of being bold and being safe within the bunker. Now sometimes you do take damage, whether it be from a tripwire you didn't see, a poorly thrown grenade, or even a close encounter with a stalker. You'll notice as you open your inventory, your hand will mirror how healthy you are with how much blood is present on the hand. You can bandage and kind of stop the bleeding, but one thing that you'll quickly learn is that you'll leave a blood trail if this goes unaided. This doesn't seem to directly affect the stalker, but large rats will begin to follow the trail and will hiss at you, and that can alert the stalker. Or they might even be so bold to just straight up attack you, which, once again, the rats themselves will do damage as well. The rats are more of a puzzle in the game, for sure, with their placement around certain corridors, but they are definitely a secondary hazard for sure. And between the myriad of ways that you can deal with those and the stalker, there is a lot of player freedom when it comes to this. Player freedom isn't just about how you deal with the threats or even avoid them though, because you've definitely still got a job to do. There are 5 main districts within the bunker, with the central area, the maintenance, the arsenal, soldiers' quarters, and of course the prison. The game will have you running back and forth between these to get new items like bolt cutters, locker codes, keys, and even more to help you progress towards escaping. Having the central bunker and therefore the safe room in the middle really works to make it never feel like any run is going on for too long and you don't have to lug stuff around for too long, but it's just enough to be stress-inducing when you're really far out, you've spent a lot of time between saves, and the stalker's in the room with you. But speaking of lugging things around, we do have a limited inventory, but with the ability to hoard in the safe room and also finding inventory upgrades, it's never too frustrating. Just enough to where you're never too prepared for any survival situation, and that once again leads to some very stressful encounters. All of these mechanics come together to create the perfect symphony of gameplay decisions. Do I wind up the light in the dark? Break down this door? Drop the fuel for this grenade instead? Or do I hide or do I run? all decisions that you're making every minute or so within the game. I hope by highlighting the tools and drawbacks of the player and the stalker without giving very much away, I have properly explained what makes this game great without spoiling why it'll blow you away completely. Ultimately, I think every good horror game has to live and die with its presentation, the audio, and the visuals. Whether I want that or not, that's how people create their first impressions with these kinds of games. And I'm happy to report that Amnesia doesn't disappoint here either, though this is where my few nitpicks do come into play. Visually, Amnesia is a game that is very back and forth. Certain textures feel not that good, like the rock walls or certain ground textures in the beginning, leading to certain aspects of the opening story presentation feeling lesser than the rest of the game. Though it's really jarring because there's a lot of great models within the game as it is, like the stalker, the floor in the bunker, wooden doors, and the corpses all look great. I'm not really sure I can say that, but I did, so we're gonna stick with it. As I've already mentioned, there's 5 main districts of the bunker. Another thing that I love about the design layout is that you can tell which one you're in just by looking around. There's visual variety while also still fitting into that grimy art direction. In the prison, there's plenty of cells and much more of an emphasis on security, and it feels carved in stone. In the armory, there's heavier walls built for explosions because, well, that's what's all over the place. And in the main section, there's more open and less claustrophobic environments, while having exits all around to each of the other areas. Another great example of a push and pull with quality are actually the animations. The first person animations look phenomenal, bar the actual look of aim down sights, because with the gun it kind of looks a little stuttery at times. I don't know if the FPS of the animation is matching up with my display. I'm not really sure what the issue was there, but it didn't look that good. But outside of that though, I promise that every other first person animation in the game looks amazing. The bandaging and first aid, the lighting of torches and Molotovs, and even the winding up of the light are perfect. But one thing I've noticed that I don't like as much are the animations for the stalker. When he's trained on you and he's trying to come at you, it's just fine. I mean, you're basically scrambling to survive and he's coming right at you. But if you ever catch him skulking around, he's a bit stiff and can even appear to be a bit floaty. To me, it's just sad that the main antagonist is something that comes off as slightly lesser once you get to know him. Much like every Marvel villain redemption story. Darren. Certain effects and particles are also quite good too. The gas grenades slowly fill the whole area while making visibility minimal on top of already being deadly. The grenade shrapnel actually isn't over the top during the explosions, and the gunshots that release sparks with every shot both feel grounded in reality, and that to me helps with the immersion and therefore the horror. But my absolute favorite are the flames and fire effects. There's just something so satisfying about them that it lights the room and protects you from harm while also just being fucking pretty. Jumping off of the fire, for all of the small texture inconsistencies that there could be, the absolute greatest asset of Amnesia has to be the use of the light. This game is dark. The rare instances of natural light bathe the room as far as possible, but there's nothing more satisfying than flipping on the switch, and I'm not even Drake. Keeping the generator powered up is a big part of the experience, so it makes sense that lights should be a bit of a game changer both mechanically and the way it feels for the player. It's safer, and it definitely feels that way. The contrast of darkness and light is huge, and I've not seen a game embody visuals in this way narratively in such a long time. Your time within the bunker is one that's quite the spectacle. An orchard full of quality and distinctive visuals with just a few bad apples makes this experience still worth peeling your eyes over. I don't know if that worked, but I'm gonna say it did. To me, this was a bug-free experience. Outside of one visual glitch right at the very beginning with a broom kind of going through the floor. And while that's just funny and I don't really care about that, one thing I am tired of after all of these years is the game engine, HPL, having to stop or stutter as the game loads in new areas. The one good thing I'll say is that the stalker at least follows you through these areas just like they did back in Penumbra, but it's so unfortunate that that is still an issue that this engine has to deal with after so many years. Once again, these pseudo doors between areas as you're going down steps or something isn't a big deal, but it's still just something I wish wasn't there. But moving on from visuals and bugs, I guess, we'll go on to sound design, which, as always with frictional games, is incredible. The footsteps, the wind-up of the light, and the creaks of the doors all have me on edge even though I'm the one making the sounds. And that's because I know what comes next. The sounds overhead as the monster tries his best to cosplay an imposter from Among Us, accompanied by the dust falling, is super unsettling. He challenges you with every grunt and growl, matching your movements. It's creepy and unsettling. I always find myself sitting perfectly still, waiting for the stalker to make a noise so I can gauge just how far away he is. The items you use also reflect the reality of your situation. The World War I period of less advanced and run-down machinery serves as a cold contrast to the deafening silence of the bunker. The revolver sounds visceral and as though it packs a punch, but never enough quite to take down your foe. The grenades and other explosions are so overbearing that you know shit is real, and my favorite is the generator, because it sounds like it's always going to break down at any moment, and it's just on brand for a horror movie. For music, there really isn't much, but from the main menu to the save room, it's somber and very reminiscent of the Penumbra theme, and all I can say is that I hope that they remake that for their next game. Voice acting is interesting as there also isn't very much, but it's pretty high quality whenever it does show up. Only certain notes are voiced, a few moments at the beginning and small instances throughout the experience are as well, but every one of them lends itself to the moment and feels organic and immersing within the emotions of the scene. Whether it's the stalker, the music, or the sounds of war muffled by feet of dirt, I look at all of the sound within the game as exceptionally high quality. But as I've hit my 4 main categories, I'd like to go ahead and do my final verdict. Frictional games have always had a piece of the puzzle right in game design. Whether it be the scares of Amnesia: The Dark Descent, the freedom in puzzles and traversal of Penumbra, or the visuals and story of Soma, there's always been a striving for betterment. In my eyes, I'm happy to acknowledge that while The Bunker isn't my favorite story, it's my favorite frictional games package altogether. Hitting on all cylinders, Amnesia is the best it's ever been in my eyes. The striking visuals with a few minor dips is bolstered by the top-notch sound of ambience throughout the bunker, and of course all of the sounds that interrupt that grim serenity. The story feels out, but definitely takes the sidestep for the gameplay loop to shine through. The not-so-safe runs to get supplies and progress through the items needed to escape is incredibly addictive, and one that I plan to play again for sure. And for 5+ hours and a good bit of replayability for $24.99 US, this is a must-play for horror fans and a no-brainer if you have Xbox Game Pass. But really, that's about it for me. I've covered everything I feel like I need to say without completely squashing any spoilers that I would want to let you experience for yourself. My name is fallinghurts. I do reviews like this from time to time, and a lot of times I talk about games that are going to be coming out. So consider subscribing, and maybe you'll even like something else as well. Yeah, that's it. Goodbye.